Athlete number 1 is a women's rugby player who demonstrates a motor control issue. Here we have athlete number 1 performing a back squat. Her start position ticks some of the criteria. However, shoulder retraction is poor and her chest is not up and out. It is hard to see from this angle, but there is a suggestion of thoracic hyperextension here too. Athlete needs to pull down on the bar in an effort to bend it to create more tension in the torso. Athlete drops into a triple flex position here. She is demonstrating a lack of control through her speed of movement. We can see that she initiates the pattern here via the knee rather than an hip back strategy. This causes significant anterior knee translation with the knee well in front of the toe. We can also see that the athlete's weight transfer is forward onto the forefoot as opposed to the heel. There is also early signs of lumbopelvic control issues here, with the pelvis exhibiting a posterior pelvic tuck almost immediately. At the bottom, the bar still lacks tension, and this athlete is still showing a lack of shoulder retraction. She is struggling to break parallel. The hips are still displaying a posterior pelvic tuck. Her weight transfer is still on the forefoot. This is due to excessive anterior knee translation. On the ascent, we can see this is still a very knee-dominant strategy. We can also see that the weight continues on her forefoot as she ascends to the top. This is a very quad-dominant strategy that is being deployed here. The rear view shows us a few new things here. We can see that the athlete is adopting a fairly wide grip, which could contribute to the shoulder retraction issue mentioned and possible thoracic hyperextension. We can see at the bottom there's a very slight internal rotation at the knee. This is likely due to the increased recruitment of the adductor. However, the knees still appear to demonstrate good alignment with the big toe and does not appear to go into a valgus position. A physical constraint of asking this athlete to sit to a box would force this athlete to shift their hips back, as well as fixing her weight distribution issues. Various internal and external coaching cues could also be used. Athlete number 2 is a golfer with a physical capacity restriction in her ankles. This athlete is barefoot in order to enable us to see that restriction more clearly. Athlete starts in a good position with all relevant criteria satisfied here. This athlete demonstrates much better shoulder retraction with chest up and out. We can see that this athlete demonstrates almost a polar opposite to that of the first athlete in terms of the initiation at the hip. Athlete demonstrates a more horizontal torso angle to compensate for a lack of dorsiflexion. Gaze is straight ahead and head stays neutral. Good weight distribution on the heel throughout the descent. In contrast to that of the previous athlete, this athlete demonstrates significantly less anterior knee translation, with the knee barely breaking the toe. At the bottom, we can see that athlete cannot even get close to breaking parallel. This is once again due to her restricted ankle dorsiflexion and need to maintain her center of mass over her base of support in order to maintain balance. As she hits the bottom is a very slight weight shift towards the front of her foot. This is once again due to her restricted range. We can see this weight shift continues to slightly inside the foot, causing a slight pronation as she ascends throughout. As she hits the top, she has good extension through the hip and recruitment of the glutes. The rear view offers us very little new information here, other than a possible asymmetry at the hip. The differences from the left side to the right side can be seen in this very basic knee-to-wall assessment, where you can not only see the asymmetry, but you can also see how restricted her dorsiflexion is in general. Elevating the heel is one intervention we could use. Elevating the heels allows for greater depth, a more upright torso, and a more anterior positioned knee, as well as weight distribution towards the heel. We should also address the joint stiffness and the lack of ankle dorsiflexion. There are many ways to achieve this, but here are some interventions that we could use. Good programming, utilizing unilateral patterns, could also correct these imbalances. At the start, athlete is demonstrating a good triple flex position. Her feet are shoulder width apart, with her toes very slightly turned out. This enables the athlete to keep her center of mass closer to a base of support. Her hips are above her knees, but below her shoulders. However, once again, this athlete is demonstrating significantly anterior knee translation, with the knee going over the toe. This suggests that even though the weight looks fairly even across her entire foot, most of her weight is on the forefoot. On the ascent, we can see that the athlete demonstrates a similar pattern to that of the bottom of a back squat. Weight distribution is on the forefoot, with that continuing as she moves up through the lift. This is likely due to the athlete initiating the pattern at the knee. This appears to be a very quad dominant pattern again. This seems to be a prominent characteristic in this athlete. This also causes the athlete to shift the bar forward as she initiates the lift before pulling it back slightly at the top. Torso position is fairly consistent, although she does exhibit some thoracic extension at liftoff. She completes this movement well, locking through the glutes with no hyperextension in the spine. We can see the athlete starts the descent with simultaneous ankle, knee and hip flexion here in more of a squat pattern. She is demonstrating a good head position, her shoulders are retracted and her spine remains neutral throughout. She also demonstrates a good bar path on the way down. However, we can see again that the athlete demonstrates a significant shift in terms of her weight to her forefoot as she descends. Athlete completes the rep in the same way she started it, with excessive anterior knee translation. Athlete does demonstrate a good level of control throughout the lift. The rear view offered no new information. Internal and external cueing this athlete would help improve her movement strategy. Athlete number 2 is demonstrating a good start position here, although we can still see that she is struggling with that knee translation. Although this is dominantly a hinge pattern, anterior knee translation is still required in order to achieve the bottom position. We can also see that the weight is slightly forward on her foot. We can see here that the athlete initiates at the knee, similar to that one that we've just seen. This is despite a markedly different start position. This is in part due to where the weight is placed within her foot. An increased hip drive with this weight distribution would likely force the athlete forward. This is not optimal, as this is a hinge pattern and we want considerable contribution from the hip musculature, and at the moment this is a very quad dominant pattern. We can see here that she is extending the knee early. She also fails to lock out completely. A simple internal cue should fix this. If she was told to drive through her heel, she would effectively lock out her hips and fix the weight distribution problem. On the descent, the athlete begins the pattern by sitting back, demonstrates good control and bar path throughout this descent. This is a more favourable strategy than that of the previous athlete who transferred their weight towards their knee after the initiation. The rear view shows us more asymmetries with this athlete. In particular at the hip, these kind of asymmetries are to be expected, however they are not affecting the strategy, and therefore are beyond the scope of this analysis. There is also signs of increased adductor activity. Athlete's knee does not appear to go into an excessive valgus position. As there are motor control issues here, simple cues could fix this. However, the overall strategy is dictated by her physical limitations and capacity restrictions.